You got to hear this. And then they said, no more remote work. Don't do that, really, seriously. Hey, welcome to Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf, and today we're watching the remote work orders that are being issued to say no more of that. This is part one. We're redoing it because there's some audio problems. Still having some challenges with some of the AI software that we've been working with, fighting for control of systems at times. Apologize for that. Here's the thing. Here's part one. Here's the number one reason not to do a return to work, return to office, RTO. This is being called by the corporate types. Why not to just issue blanket mandatory return to office? And before we get to that, hold that thought for a second. Here's a question I got for you. Why would you want people to come back to the office? If you've been working remote or hybrid, you know, have some people remote, some people on, some people, you know, are working remote part-time, on-site part-time. Why would you change the policy? Now, a lot of this started 3 years ago because of the Great Lockdown. There's no option, depending on where you're running your business. There were some places that just had no option but to have people working from home because that was the government orders getting shut down. Everybody's got to be home. Now that that's been in place for a while, why are you changing? You adapted. What are you making the change for? Is it because of employee engagement? This is the number one reason I've been hearing is like, you know, we're having a problem with employee engagement. We got to get everybody back in the office. You know, it's like we talked about in part two. We touched on this. This is the number one driver that I'm hearing as an excuse for bringing back to office. You know, employee engagement, got to see them, got to yada, 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 yada. And the reason for it is just bad management because there's no real focus on why to bring people back to the office. It's back to that BS mindset of we'll do this one thing and it'll fix bigger problems that we've got. And it won't. There's no silver bullet in business. You know that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. There's no silver bullet. If you are ordering people back to the office, that better be part of a larger system. It should be a systemic issue, a systemic decision that's part of a bigger series of steps that are being taken to fix some problem. Now, specific to employee engagement, having people together face to face, live in the same room is very important. I learned that in the 1990s running corporate teams. If you've been watching Wolf's Watch for any length of time, I've mentioned this frequently in recent months because it ties into so many things that have been happening in the last few years. Running corporate teams in the 1990s, I had a team that I created. I was on another team before that where we had people from multiple business units working with different product lines in different parts of the United States that were on the same team. When I was running one of those the team that I created, I learned that I needed to get people together once a quarter for 2 days to get work done. But the real reason for it was to get them to break bread. Needed them at the lunch table, socializing. Needed them at the dinner table, socializing. So that would give us a rhythm where we could have informal working breakfast, and lunch where no business was allowed, dinner, no business was allowed. Right? We'd block off amount of time that was a certain amount, a certain amount of conversation on business. The rest of it, business was forbidden because they needed to focus on building relationships on each other, having that connection so that they could continue to be a high performing team, even though they worked in different parts of the company, even though they had different reasons, different goals, different pressures when they weren't face to face. That's part of why you need to have people face to face. Does that mean you need to have them in the office? Just having them in the office isn't going to fix employee engagement. Think about employee engagement. There's a lot of things right now. Employee engagement is somewhere around 32% nationally. The latest study that I was reading, that's down from, it was pitiful before the Great Lockdown. It was in the 30s. It was below 40% before the Great Lockdown. It was below 30% after the Great Lockdown. And to make it even worse, there's actually 17% of employees that are actively working against their companies. They're on payroll, they're they're on work time, and they're actually attempting to derail what the company is doing. It's a whole different problem. So let's set that 17% aside. Let's talk about the less than 1/3 that are engaged. Why are they engaged? They have reasons for that. You should learn from them. Talk to them about that. Find out who they are and then talk to them. I think it'll be easy to identify, won't they? You know who some of your really engaged people are. The rest of them are doing, quiet quitting has become a common term. I'm not going to make this a workshop on this particular topic, but it's looking at these issues and how to solve them. Just forcing people back into the office will not. And in some cases, it will have a big backlash. Listen to people talk about their response to being forced into return to office. And a lot of times it's not handled well. So this comes back to the management of it. This is really the underlying issue here is bad management. This is a management issue. You need to work with your management team as the owner of the company, the leader of the company. You need to work with your management team to upgrade their skills so that they are better at engaging. They're better at managing and getting results so that employee engagement can be increased. And again, start with why. Start with why do you want them? What do you need to get? What aren't you getting that you need to get? Why do you want them to return to the office? And explain why this is happening. Do it in a way that gives input from them. And you're going to implement it anyway. It doesn't mean you don't ask for input. It doesn't mean communicate it effectively. And, be the leader. Step up. Be the face of the change. Make sure your managers are prepared, though. And don't do it just because you've got managers complaining about performance of employees and that they need to have them in the office in order to be able to, so we can keep an eye on them, so we can lord over them. I've had bosses that today would probably get thrown in jail. I mean, that were verbally abusive and physically threatening. And it's because I spent a lot of my corporate career working with companies that were distressed, let's say, and they were in trouble. And that really brought out the best in some and the worst in others. And you need to make sure that your managers aren't following that path. The worst of them be brought out under stress. So leave it at that. The thing is, again, why are you asking for the return to office? What problem are you attempting to solve? And will this solve it? Because if it's employee engagement, return to office isn't the solution by itself. It may be part of a bigger system of changes that you're making to better engage employees. And that's too complex of a topic to dig into today, beyond just saying it needs to be part of a system of employee engagement. Be sure it's not just a response by managers that are floundering, because all it'll do is cost you productivity, cost you key employees, and it'll just be a nightmare. So that's it for the day. Part 1, replay, because we had an audio problem with the original broadcast on this. Thanks for being part of the conversation. We'll talk some more on return to office and employee engagement specifically. Thanks for being part of the conversation. This has been Wolf's Watch. I'm Wolf, and I look forward to seeing you on the trail.